I'm wrapping up the clean out and packing up of Aunt Loretta's apartment on West Side Avenue in Jersey City. And here I am in our empty living room now, except for the couch, which I'm not taking with me. And I wanted to show you something of great sentimental value and history in my family, in the kitchen. And that would be the kitchen set. This table and these chairs belong to my mother and father when they lived on Page Avenue in Lyndhurst. They got married in 1956, moved into Page Avenue in Lyndhurst, and had been there ever since until my father's death in 1991. And then my mother passed away in 2016, and I moved out of the Page Avenue Lyndhurst house less than a year ago, at the beginning of 2019. But this kitchen table, this is the kitchen table that I actually sat and ate on in the 1960s when I was a young boy on Page Avenue in Lyndhurst. This is the Mazza kitchen set, belonging to my mother, Josephine, and my father, Neil, and my grandfather, Rocco A. Mazza, my paternal grandfather who lived with us in Lyndhurst. And we had assigned seating in those days. Everybody sat in the same chairs. It was tradition. And that is, my father would sit at the head of the table over there in that very seat. My mother would sit over here in that chair. And my grandfather, my paternal grandfather Rocco, would sit in this chair. He lived with us, and so he had dinner with us every single night. And I sat in this chair right over here. That was my chair as a young boy. That was the configuration of the seating arrangements on this table set. But here's one incident I clearly remember on this kitchen set. And that is one day, I think I was about 7 or 8 years old. No more than 8, maybe 7. And we were having a dinner table conversation. The family was all sitting around the table. My father worked every single night of the week, except he was off on Sundays. He worked for Macy's department store. Back then, it was Bamberger's in the Garden State Plaza. He worked for Bamberger's, and then he was off every Sunday, and he was off every Wednesday evening. So he had dinner with us on Wednesday evenings and Sunday afternoon dinners, of course. So on one Wednesday evening, we were all sitting around the table having a conversation, and I was like 7 or 8 years old. And my grandfather said to me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I looked around the table. I looked at my father. I looked at my mother. I looked back at my grandfather. And I said to them, "I want to be a judge." And my grandfather said, "Why do you want to be a judge?" And I turned around without missing a beat and said, "Because I want to put you, and you in jail." That's what I said to my family. Obviously, I was being a snot-nosed, bratty kid. But that, I will never forget that. And they had got a big laugh out of that. And there was a big laugh. And that was one of the highlights of our dinner table memories. I got tons of dinner table memories, but that was one of my favorites. Also, when I was a kid, in the 1960s, when I was growing up as a young boy in the 1960s, I did not eat much. I hated eating dinner. I was rail thin in the 1960s as a young boy, rail thin like this. And my mother would put food on my plate. She'd cook every single night, fresh, beautiful, great, fantastic Italian food, fresh food on my plate. And it would take me all night long to eat the damn dish of food, because I just didn't want to eat. And my mother's rule was, you eat everything on your plate, young man. And you don't get up. And you don't get up from the table until you finish eating. That was the rule. So I sat there all damn night. Funny part was, my cousin and my friend would be sitting outside under the patio in the backyard waiting for me, actually on the patio in the backyard, waiting for me to finish eating so that I can go out and play in the night before it was time to go to bed and before it got too dark. And I would just sit there and eat slowly because I didn't want to eat. And I ate so slowly on this table. And I wouldn't get out there for hours. And the funny part is, my cousin would sit out there under the tree on the patio all night long, patiently waiting for me, and never got angry, Just sat there and waited because he knew that I was a pain in the neck and I wouldn't eat. But I finally finished my food hours later and I go out. That happened in the 1960s. By the time 1970s rolled along, in the early 70s, I discovered cheeseburgers on a trip to California that my family took, and forget it. That was the end of the picky eating. I started eating like crazy. Remember Wimpy from Popeye eating all the cheeseburgers? Well, across the country, I discovered cheeseburgers, and I ate them all across the country, back and forth. I love cheeseburgers, starting in like 1970 or 1971. So anyway, this table I'm leaving behind. I have no use for it and anymore. It doesn't fit in my new apartment where I'm moving in Lyndhurst. And but when my father and mother remodeled the kitchen in Lyndhurst in the early 1970s, they got a whole new kitchen set, and they remodeled the complete kitchen. And so they got rid of this. But instead of throwing it out, they gave it to my Aunt Teresa and Aunt Loretta on West Side Avenue in Jersey City. And so this has been Aunt Teresa and Aunt Loretta's table set for all these years. And this came from my Page Avenue house, the same table I ate on as a child through the 1960s and early 1970s. This was our dinner table. And now I say goodbye to it, officially say goodbye. I will never see it again once I leave here. So that's a story. I wanted to share that with you. Some great memories on this kitchen table. Fantastic memories. My mother's fantastic food, Italian cooking, rested on this table until we ate it. And it was great. Great memories. And my grandfather, and during the nights when my father was working and he couldn't come home for dinner, that was Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. My grandfather, who would sit here, and me sitting here, we would eat together. And sometimes my mother would eat. Sometimes she didn't eat all the time. She liked to cook, but not eat so much. Strange, but that's the Italian thing. So me and my grandfather, Rocco Mazza, sitting here, and me sitting there. We used to eat together all the time, every single night, on this table, on this very kitchen table with these kitchen chairs. Can you imagine? Anyway, I wanted to share that with you and bid adieu and arrivederci to this kitchen set. Love you. You certainly have given us a lot of service.